What drives someone to embrace darkness, even when they once stood for light? In Jedi vs. Sith, the essential guide to the Force, Tolaris Shim offers a powerful framework for understanding the Jedi's fall to the dark side. The first stage of falling to the dark side is known as temptation, but this idea deserves a closer look. Temptation isn't just about having a choice. It's about the allure of a particular kind of power. The power to reshape the world according to your desires. Master Tolaris Shim argues that Jedi are uniquely vulnerable to this temptation. Why? Because their connection to the Force gives them the ability to shape reality itself. But with that power comes a dangerous risk: arrogance, the belief that noble intentions can justify any means to achieve their goals. The Jedi are trained to restrain their desires, to maintain discipline. Yet paradoxically, it's this restraint that plants the seed of their potential downfall. Power is seductive because it promises control. Control over your own life, over others, and even over the unpredictable forces of the universe. When a Jedi succumbs to temptation, it's often not out of malice, but a desire to act decisively, to avoid the uncertainties and risks of inaction. It's not about domination. It's about the conviction that they alone know what is right. But in believing this, they begin to drift away from the principles they once swore to uphold. Take Exar, for example. His story is a perfect illustration. He wasn't consumed by evil. He was driven by curiosity, by the pursuit of knowledge and power. Kun believed he could tap into the dark side's immense energy without being overtaken by it. His fall began with a very human desire, the desire to know, to seek knowledge that transcends normal limits. We've all faced moments where the drive to act, whether to help, to change, or to control, feels overwhelming. When we convince ourselves that using power isn't just an option, it's a responsibility. The second stage of the fall is what Master Tolaris Shim calls imperilment, a state where a Jedi becomes so tangled up in their own desires and the methods they use to achieve them that they lose sight of the true cost of their choices. What may have started as a noble pursuit, using the dark side to achieve a perceived good, soon turns into a dangerous game of rationalization. What makes imperilment so striking is the self-deception at its core. This stage uncovers a painful truth about human nature. We are all capable of justifying actions that deep down we know are morally compromised. The Jedi who rationalizes their use of the dark side is no longer guided by clear principles. Instead, they create an internal narrative that convinces them that their ends justify the means. Anakin Skywalker's fall is the perfect example of this. His fear of loss, the desperate need to save his wife, becomes the driving force behind his descent. At this stage, Anakin isn't seeking power for its own sake. He's driven by desperation. He believes the dark side is the only way to achieve his goal, saving Padme. Anakin doesn't rationalize his actions out of selfishness or malice, but because he genuinely believes the ends will justify the means. Anakin's tragedy is that his fear of loss led him to commit acts that ultimately caused the very thing he feared the most, Padme's death. In a sense, he wasn't just imperiled by the dark side, he was imperiled by his inability to confront the limits of his own power, and by his refusal to accept the uncertainties and natural course of life. In the third stage, submission, the Jedi fully surrenders to the dark side. With this surrender comes a profound moral transformation. No longer does the Jedi justify or rationalize their actions. Their fall is complete. What was once just a tool to achieve a greater good now becomes the very foundation of their existence. The Jedi no longer questions what they're doing. They've moved beyond the reach of morality, driven only by the power they wield. At this point, the Jedi has fully embraced the idea that the ends justify the means, but it goes further than that. It's the erasure of the means themselves. The Jedi no longer sees themselves as doing wrong. They've become incapable of understanding the harm they cause. They're no longer driven by principles like selflessness or compassion. Instead, they are fueled by a warped vision of justice, one defined not by empathy, but by the power they hold. Exar offers a perfect example of this transformation. No longer a seeker of knowledge, he becomes an agent of destruction, defined entirely by the power he commands. His submission to the dark side reflects a larger, more philosophical concern: the danger of totalitarianism, whether in politics, society, or even within our own minds. When we submit completely to any system, whether it's a set of beliefs, an ideology, or the dark side itself, it can lead to the collapse of our individuality. At that point, we're no longer subjects of moral choice. We become instruments of our own desires, pawns in the very system we once thought we controlled. In a broader sense, submission to the dark side mirrors human addiction and compulsion. It's the moment when we lose control over our desires and become enslaved by them. Master Tolaris Shim's final stage, redemption, offers the possibility of salvation, but it's never guaranteed, and it's never easy. According to Shim, redemption can only be achieved through selflessness and atonement. It's a return to the light that demands more than just rejecting the dark side. It requires a complete transformation of one's moral compass. For a fallen Jedi, redemption means proving their worth not through words, but through an act of pure self-sacrifice, demonstrating their commitment to the well-being of others, not for personal gain, but for the greater good of the galaxy. Anakin Skywalker's redemption is the ultimate example of this possibility. In his final act, Anakin sacrifices himself to save his son, placing love and selflessness above the power he once craved. In that moment, he transcends his corruption and reconnects with the light side of the Force. For some, redemption remains out of reach. Many dark Jedi choose to stay in darkness, unwilling to let go of the power they've gained. This reveals that redemption isn't just about actions, it's about will. It requires surrendering pride, ego, and ambition. Shim's framework reminds us that the journey to darkness is shaped by personal choices, by our desires, fears, and the justifications we create for ourselves. Yet, it also reminds us that the path back to the light is always there, for those brave enough to embrace selflessness and commit to true change.